Hey guys, I just made a quick video today with a few questions about my Stihl 066 for guys in the know. So if you're a guy in the know or just want to learn a little bit about a Stihl 066, watch the video. But if you want to skip to the end, I'll put a timestamp or look at the chapter markers below. There's two cuts at the end of this video, which I think are pretty cool for Stihl 066. Thanks guys, take care. I made a video a few days ago where I talked a little bit about my Stihl 066, and then I made some cuts, and I made some cuts in some very ant-filled wood, so it didn't really give a very accurate representation of what this saw is capable of. So I did just want to go ahead and make a few more cuts. What I've been doing is basically putting a tank of gas in the saw a day and then just cutting little slices off this log. Number one, to get used to using a longer bar. But number two, I've been having some issues with the saw, with the carb, basically since I bought it. And we'll talk about that in a minute. I have a question for you guys. But what I have here is I have a 32-inch light guide bar from Stihl on what I believe is an 066 chainsaw. However, I bought this used like 8 or 10 years ago, and I know sometimes people change the covers. But I've also got the chain I'm using here is 33 RSF, and you can see it's actually got, bottom right of the box, it's got 105 drive links, so it's a 32-inch chain. And I've been using a 7/32 file on my Stihl chains. They usually say to use 13/64, but I know Buck and Billy Ray talks a lot about getting the gullet. So I just go ahead and use the bigger chain, and if it takes a few more strokes to sharpen, so be it. I started doing that with my smaller chains, where if they recommend a 5/32, I've been filing with a 3/16, and I notice it cuts a little bit better. It might have a better angle for being sharper. I don't know. So I've been using a 7/32 file on these Stihl chains. And then I do use the Husqvarna depth gauge, and I just wanted to show you, in the past I've always used the soft side even for hardwoods, but my depth gauges were getting a little too low. So now what I do is I just keep I just use the hard for the hardwood we're cutting here. But what I had to do, if you look at the tip of this tool, because of the way the chain is, I just had to file it a little bit wider so it would fit over the Stihl chain. But I absolutely love this this depth gauge tool, and this was another Buck and Billy Ray idea. He showed this on one of his videos. I am cutting, this is sugar maple. I had an arborist fell this last year. It's just been sitting here. I bought the bar last winter for this saw and just never got around to cutting it. So this is what I've been doing the last few days. Part of my days. But the log, I don't know if you guys can see, it's about 23 inches in diameter, and the widest part of the log this way is 23 inches as well. So my question for you guys who are really into these saws and know a lot about them is, this has a WJ69 carburetor, and somebody did remove the limiter caps and the thing the limiter caps go on to, but the screws are awfully loose on this saw, and I suspect this saw saw a lot of professional arborist work back in the day, and they just got rid of it because it was getting near the time the saw was going. I've got 150 PSI compression on this. It'll start in 2 or 3 pulls. It'll restart in 1 or 2 pulls. But almost every tank of gas, I find I lose the settings on my carb. So I did put some blue Loctite on the screws of the carburetor, and that seemed to have helped a little bit. But do carburetors, do the jets in there, basically get wallowed out, or the screws just like from all the vibration, do the screws in the carbs just get like slowly worn down so you can't really lock the carburetor in? I did just rebuild this carb, and it was a WJ69. But if you go back, Stihl used to make a WJ67 carb, and I think they made a WJ65. And the WJ65 and 67 did not use the limiting caps. They just had the old-fashioned screws on them. So my thought was to just go back to a WJ67, if I can find one somewhere, on this saw. And again, I think this carb is perfectly fine, but man, these screws, I swear to God, they must be moving, because I've checked, there's no vacuum leak. Like, I did a pressure vacuum test. There were no leaks. You're going to see how nicely this saw runs. And so maybe it's just the carb. I don't know. And then the other thing is I started watching Buchan's friend Tin Man, and I know he works mostly on Husqvarnas, but I watched his video about how to tune carburetors. And, I know he talks about how he likes to keep the saws torquey. He doesn't want these high RPM saws. And what I noticed when I was, I would run the saw, then move the high-speed screw like a 1/16 of an inch and see what happened. But I noticed there's a point when you're in the wood where even though the chain is buried, you'll hear the saw force cycling in the wood. Like, it'll be smooth, and then it'll go, and it won't even be that often. Like, it's just ever so faint. So my question is, like, that seems to be the point where you're getting pretty rich. When you guys are tuning your saws, do you tune that out and just get just a touch leaner? Like, you're like a 1/16 of a turn, a 32nd of a turn, and it's gone. But if you go richer, it's gonna, 4-stroke in the cut. So I'm just curious what you guys think. I'm gonna go ahead and make a couple cuts, and just let me know, you guys let me know what you think, and just be amazed by this amazing saw. All right, guys, it looks like I've only got a couple cuts left in the tank. So we'll do a couple cuts, and just to show you guys how awesome this saw is. So I ran this probably about a half hour ago. So let's see how we do. So did you hear that? Even in this cut, it was still 4-stroking in the cut. So I know I could make it a little bit richer or a little bit leaner and get rid of that. But I almost wonder if it's better to leave a little bit of that 4-stroke in there. Just curious what you guys think. Let me do one more cut. I noticed on that last cut when the bar was buried and there was pressure on it, it didn't do any 4-stroking at all. But then when I didn't have as much pressure on, I could still hear it kind of do that, even in the cut, that little. But I think this is about as good as someone like me can tune a chainsaw. And I am just blown away at how nicely the saw cuts. I mean, it's not ported. I don't know what guys do with ported saws, but I mean, this is just with a sharp chain and what I think is well tuned. It's like a hot knife through butter. So anyways, guys, just let me know, the guys that know stuff, if you think that sounds right. I think I'm where I need to be, but who knows? Awesome saw.